folks, welcome back once again. It's Stevie Wonder here, live in central Pennsylvania. No, actually, it's Chris. If I break into ebony and ivory, if I break into it, you understand why. Just came from the optometrist, and my pupils are the size of silver dollars. It's once again time for, by hands down, by far, the single most popular program here on the Indaba Broadcasting Network, and that's Fireside with the Colonels, with Colonel Wyatt Toit to my side there, and myself, Wyatt heute. I threw German and Afrikaans in there. I couldn't help myself. I said heute.
Ja, dat gaan baie goed, Chris. Dankie. We have been spared and lots of things to be grateful of. So, yeah, things are going well.
Yeah, you know, I'm glad you said that. We've had a number of viewers who've gone through some personal tragedy, what with family member losses, people suffering from cancer, others going through all kinds of things. One of our viewers lost a spouse to Parkinson's. It's been a rough row for a lot of people the past several months, and some people, some concerns about their mental health and that sort of thing. And what I try to tell my viewers is that you matter. You matter. Someone took the time to nurse you and to change your nappies and to hopefully teach you right from wrong and raise you. Now, not all of our parents were good at their job, but some were, some weren't. But someone took some time and you made it to adulthood. You're here. You matter. And it may not always seem that way, but when things seem desperate and it seems like nobody cares, people should take a second, take a deep breath, and realize that they do matter. There's a purpose for them being here, and maybe they should, I don't know, I'm not a deep, devout person of faith, but sometimes prayer helps with that, help people kind of come to grips with that. But the bottom line with that point, Vine, is that everybody matters, and people should remember that.
Chris, I can't agree with you more. You know, we in the times that we are living in, it is sometimes sad to see how people is getting poorer and poorer, and I'm talking about our own people, and how people that are blessed with success and money are caring less and less about the poor. And some of the poor people, it's not by their own mistakes that they ended up where they are. So we must be patient, we must listen. Everybody got a story to tell, an important story, and
recording in progress.
From everybody that is everybody's story got a lesson, and we should take that lesson at heart. You know, I have been apart from my military career, I have been successful. But I have also been bankrupt and had nothing and had to start over again. And the fact is how you get up again after you've been down. That in the end determines character. And it's not a shame to fail. In fact, it's a learning process. But it's sad if something happens in an external situation force you to fail at age 60, 62, 63, then it becomes a problem. Because to get back into what you've been doing will be extremely difficult.
No, that's an absolutely good point. I think there's two really good lessons that we can take from that and discuss here, and it really is, I think, apropos to talk about. Number one, people do fall down on luck sometimes, and it's oftentimes not a consequence of their own making. And one should feel empathy for someone who has fallen on hard times artificially. And for instance, a lot of people lost their jobs in the immediate overreaction for the Rona hysteria that took place. A lot of businesses closed up. I mean, the disastrous consequences to the hospitality industry, hotels, tourism sites, airlines, restaurants, especially bars and clubs in South Africa is just devastating. And none of those people are to blame for that. There's nothing they've done. They were leading their lives and making decisions, hopefully wisely, but those circumstances intervene. When the government picks and chooses winners or pushes people into poverty, that's not right. And for folks like that, we should have nothing but empathy. Yes, some people find themselves in poverty, sometimes perpetually based on life decisions, but that's a minority of people. Honestly, that's not the majority of people. And frankly, the reason why so many people are poor in South Africa today is not because of Jan van Riebeck, in case you were wondering, folks. It wasn't old Jan. Jan had nothing to do with it, and it had very little to do with apartheid. That has something to do with some continuing circumstance in South Africa today. But for 28 years now, The South African government has been led by the African National Congress from a country just like Zimbabwe. It was inherited with an advanced infrastructure, the first heart transplant in the world, Christian Barnard, 1960 in South Africa, a country that led the world in defense technology, the G5, the G6. The list is endless of all their accomplishments, anti-mine vehicles. They were ahead of the world in so many respects, a first world economy delivering over half of the electricity to sub-Saharan Africa from one country of just 30 plus million people at the time. All of that to a country now of nearly 60 million, in which 46% of the country lives on state assistance and doesn't live very well, and they're ignored. It's most of those people are poor because of the macroeconomic decisions of the African National Congress, not because of white monopoly capital, not because of spatial disparities, not because of land issues, but because money was stolen from education, money was stolen from infrastructure, money was stolen from everything. So we can feel, and we should have empathy for the people who are on hard times because of someone else's actions, not their own. And I think it's a really important thing to make that distinction. And the next thing you said that I think is important here too is that there's nothing wrong with failing. People get so uptight, and some people, in fact, get to the point where they'll drive themselves to desperation. I don't know if you're familiar with this, Viant. In the U.S., the Chief of Naval Operations, of course, is the head of the Navy. He's like the Chief of Staff of the Navy, but they call it CNO, Chief of Naval Operations. Back in the 1990s, Admiral Mike Borda, a very distinguished veteran, active service admiral, four-star admiral, was the Chief of Naval Operations. A reporter did a story on him in which they claimed that a ribbon that he received during Vietnam, he had a V for valor on there, and they claimed that there was no valor, that he falsely appropriated that honor. He shot himself at the Pentagon, committed suicide over that. That's a bit much. But no, it's what I'm getting at is failure. Back to your second point here is that if you're in your 20s, your 30s, and 40s and you fail, it's not the end of the world. It may seem like it in your 40s. In your 50s and 60s, it becomes much more of a problem. You got to have a nest egg. But businessmen fail. In America, 9 out of 10 businesses fail every year. You start 10 businesses, at the end of the year, only one of those 10 will survive. That's just natural. Not every idea catches on. Not every location is perfect. Not every business cycle works. You might be at a time when sales are down for this, that, and the other. So understand that things fail. Farmers fail. They have rains that don't come. They have pests and pestilence. So failure is not a bad thing. It's something that we can learn from, which is what Viant just said. You can learn from it, especially if you're younger. You can take those lessons and apply them and not do the same thing in the future, or find a mitigating circumstance to overcome what happened to you. So I think that's two important parts there, is that we should have empathy for people who are poor, not by their own making, but by other people's intrusion. And then also remember that it's okay to fail, but it gets harder to fail when you get older, because then there's no nest egg. So I think you stated that well, and that was a bit of a long soliloquy on my part, but any follow-up on that?
Yeah, I think to touch on the decision-making in South Africa that led to a lot of failure in policies. I mean, over the years, the past 28 years, there's been a lot of promises from the African National Congress. Promises and blame. That's the two things that they are playing. But this past weekend, in fact, yesterday, with the Workers' Day celebrations, we have seen
Are you talking about Rustenburg, the Royal Bafokeng Stadium?
Yes.
Go ahead. Exactly. Go ahead.
I mean, firstly, if you look at the crowds on the grandstands, there wasn't a lot of people.
No.
Not as it used to be years ago. So the cameras was playing very carefully to focus on the small audience that was in front of the stage of the president. And then, of course, the next thing is no matter what he promised, and he said he will look into 1,000 rand rise in their salaries, and I don't know what else he promised there, it wasn't enough. And I think for an African National Congress president to be chased out of a stadium under police escort and into an armored vehicle to get to safety from his own people.
Sorry, it's rich. I made a video on it. I had a lot of fun. By the way, I'll let you finish second, but my video, I opened it up with another disconnected, condescending, arrogant, elite, privileged person named Nicolae Ceausescu, who gave a speech in Bucharest, and people started booing and shooting. He's like, what's going on? Is there an earthquake?
It's true. I mean, and NUMSA, this was a Cusatu rally.
Yep.
And NUMSA even announced that there is no purpose to celebrate Workers' Day because no jobs are being created and the government are not performing. But that is a great warning that things are going the wrong way. We should wake up, because this is a call up for all people in South Africa. If they are starting to do this with their president, it was absolutely ridiculous, almost laughable. Of course, I did not celebrate Workers' Day. I'm not from the hardcore communist side.
You're not? Oh, darn.
Yeah. But anyway, I enjoyed the off day this morning, but by not broadcasting one of my normal YouTube videos, and the excuse is, but it's a holiday. I sometimes must also find some excuse to do nothing. But still, the burning of the farms in Kirkwood.
Oh.
Yesterday there was an article in the local newspapers about a woman who lived nearby the location, and her house was completely destroyed. She refused to leave while the tensions was building up. And the first guys that came past her, she even gave them food. Mm-hmm. And then her son arrived and forcefully took her away. Just later to learn that her whole house was ransacked, burned down to ashes on the ground. Jeez. But she was good to them.
And she's not a farmer.
She gives them food.
Yep.
So they will spare her.
Yep.
And that was the mistake that all the missionaries ever in Africa has made, to think, well, they are serving the people. Now, if they don't want to save Ramaphosa, who is their president, how much less they are inclined to save the person that gave them a piece of bread or cake or what else.
Spot on.
But there's a lesson in it for us. We should be wide awake. The ANC has driven the people to craziness. They must live, they must make a living, they must survive. Somehow, they must be able to do it. But those anger in the masses is starting to come forward at a very hectic pace in South Africa.
Yeah, we
and
saw.
That spells one thing: danger.
It does. We saw a dress rehearsal for this last year. I said so at the time, and I continue to say so. The internal insurrection in the African National Congress that occurred mostly in KwaZulu-Natal, but also in Gauteng in July of last year, which, of course, not to boast, but let me go ahead and boast because I was right. On the 29th of June, when the decision was handed down from the Constitutional Court against Jacob Zuma, saying it was a contempt of court, I predicted unrest, violence, and looting. Not on the scale we saw. I didn't expect that, but that was a dress rehearsal. We saw this internal fight. The police were ill-equipped. They were ill-prepared. The security services were ill-prepared or intentionally negligent. I don't know which. The army called out. They couldn't even feed themselves. They had to go to the stores and jump the queue to get food from the stores that weren't looted. That was a dress rehearsal. The South Africa is a failed state. I'm sorry. I love South Africans and I love South Africa, but your government is a failed state. I mean, I saw this the other day, Vine. Someone sent a meme across. Hang on. They sent a meme across. They said, in South Africa, we don't drive on the left-hand side of the road. Which I was like, cool, because we drive on the right-hand side. So they don't drive on the left-hand side of the road in South Africa. They drive on what's left of the road. What remains.
No, that is true, but okay. I must say that you are very much in the same boat that we are now.
Oh, you mean the U.S.?
The US. Bloody poor president. We got a bloody poor president. And our governments I don't want to use the word in a broadcast, but the F word. We are buggered as far as that is concerned.
Uh-huh.
But once again, if we look at Kirkwood, at the farm attacks there, the police was there. They knew it was going to happen. They have been briefed. But they thought they were able to stop the people. They ran out of ammunition. They fled the scene, leaving everybody and the property of the people to the mercy of the looters. And they had to call in
private security?
Yeah, no, they were also on the scene, but they have to call in, I said refreshments, but it's not refreshments.
Reinforcements.
Versterkings.
Yeah, reinforcements.
Reinforcements, that's right.
Yeah, versterking,
from East London.
Oh, my goodness.
Which is a hell of a way.
Yeah, it's a good couple hours away drive, at least. Yeah.
So by the time that the task force arrived on the scene, once again, it was too late.
Yeah.
Everything already happened. And they are saying that it is already brewing again because they haven't reached a compromise.
Yep.
But I suspect that the police at least now will have a stronger force on scene. That's what I expect. But how much success they will have, how much success there will be, I don't know. And only time can tell. Now, if we go back to the floods in Natal, once again, a year ago, with the violence in Natal, people ran out of food. They ran out of water. There was fist fights over a bread.
Yep.
In the most richest part of Durban, where there shouldn't be any problems. People don't have money problems or anything when they live there, but there was fighting over one bread. And now the floods came. Once again, they was caught without supplies.
Yep.
Less than a year later.
Yep.
So the South African don't learn from the situations that we are experiencing. This violence and looting and stuff is going to continue and is going to grow in South Africa. And people will have to learn that they must be able to survive for lengthy periods of time. And that asks of everyone to see that you do have extra foods, medicines, fuel, water available, whether that's violence or a nature catastrophe or what else. We must be prepared for anything that can come our way, because the government is not in the position to help. We have saw that there was no helicopters available to assist with the floods in Durban.
Yep.
Once again, the task force could have been flown in by Oryx helicopter to PE. There wasn't a helicopter available. So I don't think that the ordinary South African realize in just how deep and difficult predicament we are now. We as a South African nation are in trouble because of an incompetent government, corruption, theft of money, the lack of maintenance, and in fact, they don't have the knowledge on how to do them.
Or the desire, quite frankly. I mean, you're absolutely spot on. 2 or 3 years ago, people would look at an organization that's trying to do early warning like the Sightlanders and said, they're just a bunch of nutters. They're just, end of days planners, and they're crazy. And some people still say that. And people say the same thing about preppers, people who prepare for crisis contingency. But I'll tell you what, the people in KZN who are preppers, they had water, they had petrol, they had canned food, they had batteries, they had backup generators, and they had a plan to defend their property when this all went down with the flood floods recently, and unless their home was washed away by flood, they probably came out of it pretty well. Whereas everyone else is sitting around going, we have no water. We have, and then it's just a total mess. But I have to say that it's fascinating to see people who deny what's in front of them. And South Africans, I don't think, can any longer deny the disaster that is in front of them. As you mentioned, now you mentioned the guys came from East London. Well, that's great. So now when we see something break out in Phoenix again, there'll be nobody to go to Phoenix because all the people have been pushed towards Kirkwood. And all these, search and rescue teams were taken from the Northern Cape, from Western Cape, from Gauteng, all sent down to Durban because the system was a total disaster. And by the way, who's in charge? We still don't know who's in charge. This is a clown car show. The problem is that it's people's lives and livelihoods and their future and their children. It's really absolutely horrific what's happened here. I mean, there isn't a single aspect of the African National Congress government that has actually gone well. And the things people say, electrification. Really? Great. So they added about 35 million people to the electric grid, but there's no electricity. So what good is it having a hookup when you have no electricity? Well, we have clean water for these people. Really? Then why do you have kids dying in pit latrines in the Eastern Cape going to the toilet because there's no ablution unit? Oh, housing with the RDP. That's nonsense too. They haven't even given title to the land to the occupants of the house. So they don't own it. They're beholden to the state. And if you piss the state off, they'll kick you out of your RDP house. So nothing the ANC done, not a damn thing they've done in 28 years has improved the condition of South Africans. And I'm ready to go on a rant, so I'm going to pause there, but give you a chance to get in. But then I want to get back and talk about just how quickly things can change. And all the signs are there, South Africa, America. All the signs are there. People talk about insurrection on the 6th of January. That was nonsense. But the conditions are ripe for that sort of thing. It scares me to say that even in this country, conditions are ripe for that sort of thing. They're clearly ripe in South Africa. And I'm not talking about some fringe Afrikaner, white racist, white supremacy. No, I'm not talking about that nonsense, which is largely made up. I'm talking about majority of the population in South Africa is hot full. They've had it. Anyway, let me get your chance back in there.
By the way, a friend of mine had visitors from the United States at present on his farm, hunters. And this guy brought him a card, like a credit card.
Yes.
A white supremacist card.
Okay.
Which you've earned from birth, in which you lose a death. And it's a great looking card, and I asked him, but he must order one for me as well. Okay. Obviously, there is no dollars on the card, but it is just saying a thing. It's not a question of white supremacy. I mean, if you go and look, what happened during the apartheid time, since 1961 until 1994, the country was grown into something spectacular. And I don't say that the policy of apartheid was the right policy, but at least it worked to an extent where people received food and they lived under safe conditions. I saw several tweets. By the way, the tweets now is very nice. And Elon Musk also used to be a South African, coming from South Africa. Nice to know that he can actually board this country, but the money won't reach the people. Okay, but that's beside the point. What I wanted to say now.
Well, let me. Well, while you get your thoughts back there, let me just talk about because we're not. This isn't a prepping episode. It's just you and I talking about experiences, our war stories, and our predictions and prognostications. But prognostications, that's the word. I can't even speak English today. Vielleicht soll ich auf Deutsch reden. Maybe I should speak in German. No, but anyway, so this is how quickly things can change. At the end of the Gulf War in March of 1991, is it time for your coffee to come in? Usually about this time somebody brings you coffee. No.
Little bit later.
A little bit later, okay. No, but at the end of the Gulf War in 1991, George Herbert Walker Bush had a 91% approval rating in polls. No president's ever had 91%, none in polls. Now, polls are polls, but there is a correlation between a poll and an election result. A year and a half later, he got 38% of the vote in the presidential race, and Bill Clinton got 42% and won the election. 38%, from 91 to 38%. Again, it's not apples and oranges, but the point is that hugely popular, and the guy loses a re-election. That's how quickly things can change. And they hadn't really changed. It just the narrative was spun by the Democrats and by James Carville. So that happened. Nicolae Ceausescu ran Romania since the 1960s with an iron fist, did what he wanted. He sterilized people. He dumped babies in orphanages, forced women to have children, all this kinds of stuff going on. And he thought he controlled the country. And he had a speech as Christmas approached. And he goes out on the balcony in Bucharest to talk to his comrades, the socialist comrades. And he starts talking. Within moments, they start jeering him. And he's kind of at a loss at what's going on. Next thing you know, his security are walking behind him. And they're, we got to go. Well, what's going on? What was there an earthquake? And someone's shooting. Anyway, and then the point is that, like that, and a week later, he was gunned down in a mock trial and executed. We saw how quickly, when the SAPs failed to respond to Nkandla and Jacob Zuma toying and dancing when he's too ill to go to prison, dancing out there with 6,000 or 7,000 supporters, violating lockdown restrictions, getting away with it. We saw when the government didn't respond to the EFF in Pretoria demanding that the government buy Sputnik and the China Sino jab, or they would do something. There were 6,000 to 9,000 people at that rally. No more than 100 were supposed to be outside. No mask. We saw when they violated their permit in Phoenix. We saw when the ANC went to Church Square in Pretoria to launch their campaign for the municipal elections, and the crowd limit was 2,000. There were easily 5,000 people sitting there not wearing masks. Their impunity, their disregard for the law. We see when people see the example of what law breaking gets you, when no senior officials are prosecuted and put in jail, when gangsters rule the country and almost no one goes to jail except the little guy. People see you can get away with anything, and that's what's happening in South Africa. And it takes very little to turn a situation with mob violence. You can have a quiet, restless, proper, happy crowd turn ugly just like that, and a government can topple just like that. We've seen it time and time again. And South Africans, you need to open your eyes up, because I'm not predicting that the government's falling or that crisis is coming, but you are in a situation where it takes very little to push that country into oblivion.
Yeah, what I wanted to say, Chris, I wanted to speak about Twitter. That's how I got onto Elon Musk. But there's a lot of tweets the last couple of days where people are tweeting and say, we must allow the white people to come back to rule the country and rebuild it. But the problem is, once it's rebuilt, it's going to be broken down again, because there will be another group of people that's then against that. Yesterday, they have arrested people who have stolen 1.3 million worth of railway lines in broad daylight.
Yep.
And they just load it away. But someone is buying it. And that buyers must go to prison.
Agreed.
Because then there will be this breakdown, this destruction of infrastructure will stop if there's not a market for that stuff. Trading in steel, trading in copper, all those should be prohibited at this stage in South Africa. Otherwise, it will continue until there's nothing left.
Yep. Well, here in Pennsylvania, they've actually got state law that requires recyclers to have certain standards. So, for instance, I recycle aluminum because I collect the cans that people throw out their window. When I go walking, I take a bag, I crush it, and then so I take in hundreds of thousands of cans for recycling every year because it saves a lot of energy. But anyway, it doesn't bring me much money though. But I take it in. But when you go to the recycler, they have a law. If it's not aluminum cans, then if it's other aluminum like siding or wiring or something like that that could have been stolen or stripped from a property, then you have to sign an affidavit when you recycle that, and you have to produce identification, and they write down your contact details. And then the law enforcement periodically follows up on that to make sure that there's nothing untoward going on. So you get some people who do scrapping for a profession, that's their living. They'll get knocks on the door occasionally, a couple times a year. Okay, let's see your papers, that sort of thing. I'm not a fan of government intrusion, but it certainly has proved to be a deterrent to prevent people from stealing copper, because copper, of course, has always been something. People would go into homes under construction and cut all the water pipes out their copper and do incredible damage. So those laws and the enforcement of those laws have had a tremendous impact. And if what they did is they went after the people who buy the scrap and stop them from buying it, then the whole system collapses and there's no justification for the theft. And the only time it happens after that when it's malicious or it's intended to destroy the government and governance.
Yeah, no, that's true. But yeah, I think, to be honest, South Africa, it will only stop when there's nothing left.
Yep. Yeah.
I often wondered about civil responsibilities. When does it become your duty to stop this? But then when you talk like this, you might end up behind bars.
Exactly, for insurrection or for treason or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it is difficult, and it is difficult to keep, especially the youngsters. The youngsters on the conservative side, they are past the point of angry. They are past the point of reason, willing to reason about this, because they see how the animals are being stolen on the farms. They see the damage. They heard of their parents talking about the proud old days and how well everything functioned. I mean, even in South Africa now, the Intercape bus service, which was actually providing an excellent service, is now being targeted.
Mm-hmm.
It is as if the whole system is being attacked with the purpose to destroy everything that is working.
Spot on, 100%. I think a lot of this is intentional. It may not be organized, but it's intentional. You've got this internal fight in the ANC. You've got one faction that wants this radical economic transformation and wants to see the current government fail. Absolutely true. But let me take a second here and break for a second. Hey, folks, you're listening to Fireside with the Colonels. It's a fortnightly program here on the Indaba Broadcast Network with Colonel Wynand Toit. Oh, this side, got the hand going the wrong direction. That side, and myself, Colonel Chris Wyatt, South African Defense Force, U.S. Army. We spent decades in uniform supporting and defending our nations, and we talk about our experiences, and also geopolitical issues focused on Southern Africa, but not exclusively. We also talked about Ukraine and other things. So thank you for joining us. If you're new to the program, I see we've pushed up this highest number of viewers I've had. Wow, I almost feel like the old days of my old channel before it got censored. We got over 225 people watching right now. So if you're watching for the first time, folks, there's a like button right below the video. Please push that because according to YouTube, it drives viewership. I don't know if it's true, but anyway, you push it and you get to hear this.
That was easy.
There you go. Just push that button down there and become a subscriber. It's absolutely free. You don't have to be a paying member of the channel to watch this content. And for now, I continue not to advertise virtually any of my videos. No adverts on them. So the only way you get hit up for money is if you decide to become a paying supporter of independent journalism or you want to do a super chat. Anyway, so thanks a lot for that. Yeah, so it's almost as if it's intentional. And the same thing's happening here. I mean, 97 genders and, suing people for not making a birthday cake. It's a private business. If I don't want to sell you a cake, I don't have to sell you a cake. Who can make me? Well, courts are making people make cakes for gay couples, and it violates the religious tenets. It's just that the world is so crazy. And people think the craziness is Ukraine. Ukraine is actually kind of normal. Warfare, sadly, is normal. But this stupidity is off the charts. Gender and sexuality and all this stuff. It's all meant to divide and break everybody into little tiny groups that can easily be manipulated for and against each other. And of course, you see it every day in South Africa. Race, it's always about race. It's always race. And when in fact, race is probably one of the smallest problems that South Africa has. It's a problem. We all got a problem with it, but it's not the problem. The problem is the ANC. It's a racketeering organization masquerading as a political party. Bottom line. Case closed. I'm done.
And the problem is, Chris, is that we cannot turn it around. The country is basically bankrupt. So even if the DA or the Freedom Front or WU comes into power, the chances to save the country are really, really slim because all the resources is gone. And it's interesting, it's not just happening in South Africa. It's also happening in Namibia, who became independent just 2-3 years before South Africa, so-called where the freedom fighters came into power. Just today there was a huge accident in the northern part of Namibia, a train smash, a head-on collision between two trains. And the people is waiting there, they say it is poor or just pure stupidity. What's the right word? When you are not capable of doing a thing in the correct way.
Inept?
Inept, yes. So it's all over. It's not just limited to South Africa. The only country that is progressing or at least stable is Botswana.
Yep. And even then, the president they currently have is a nut job, so they're on the edge at the moment.
Yes, I've heard those rumors, but I cannot elaborate on that at this stage.
I of course, I lived in Botswana, and I have close ties to people in the political community there and the military and security services, and it's Botswana is stable, but it's the current president, he needs to go. He needs to go. Also, there needs to be a little bit more transparency in government than there has been in recent years. It's been a well-governed country for decades, but it's moving towards a place where it may be in jeopardy. Not yet, but it's close. But it's not like South Africa or where Namibia is going or where Zimbabwe already went. But it definitely has its challenge. And it's unfortunate because it all comes down to self-aggrandizement, ego, and greed. Those three things are what bury countries. And so let me, real quickly before we continue, let me just thank, there's been a couple of subscribers that come on here. Not everybody's subscription comes up, but before we started the program, it was, let me see if I can find this very quickly. It was Yana, oh, come on. Sorry, it's not cooperating here. Yana Fun, I can't see Skalk. I think it was Jana van Skalkvik. And then Michelle Meinkes also became a subscriber, and Alan Groenewald just became a subscriber. Speaking of Groenewald, Dr. Peter Groenewald will be back on my channel from the Freedom Front Plus sometime in the very near future. If anybody's interested in that, we'll be talking about South Africa, politics, the State of the Union or State of the Nation address a few weeks back, State of the Union. Anyway, so I'm sorry. Go ahead. I just want to make sure we shared that so people get recognition.
No, but your talk with Peter Groenewald should be very interesting. I know him for a couple of years, and he was also in the military. Of course, everybody in South Africa
back in the day, over a certain age.
Yeah, and interestingly, he was in the on horseback.
The cavalry.
Cavalry, yeah. And he was also a show rider. There with the horses next to each other, standing wide legs on top of the horses. So he's quite an interesting guy. And I had a chat with him recently. And where he said, well, why not you do what you do on your side, what you can do. I do on the political side what I can do. But generally speaking, he solves the same danger. Or is seeing the same danger.
Yes.
And he's doing well under the circumstances as far as politics is concerned. But, we just had the floods in Natal. We had the Kirkwood situation. And we got John Steenberg flying over to the Ukraine for a fact-finding mission, which is absolutely ridiculous. Yes, if you want to go and find the facts, you got to visit Ukraine and Russia. You cannot just visit the one country. If you want to be an independent approach on the situation, you must look at both sides. You must look at the Minsk agreement, which was laughed off. You must understand the Russian frustration in this whole issue. And the warnings they had given before the time. But going to only to Ukraine to do what? We are sitting with crises in South Africa that is well beyond anyone's reasoning, but he, as the leader of the opposition, official opposition, left the country for a week to go to Ukraine. Maybe I'm the wrong guy here, but I don't understand things like that. He should rather spend his energy in South Africa and try to fix stuff here.
Agreed. Given the dumpster fire that South Africa is, and I say that with all deep affection for South Africa, but it is a dumpster fire right now. Given the dumpster fire that South Africa is, there should be no political leaders going abroad except a foreign minister. It's the only person from the country should be going abroad, and then only sporadically for specific things like economic conferences and things like that. The fact that the ANC felt the need to give 50 million rand to Cuba in the midst of a time when 3 million South Africans have lost their income and hundreds of thousands of restaurants and businesses have collapsed and closed, shows you just how callous and uncaring and disconnected from the real world these buffoons are. Before we go any further, Feeny Bernard just became a subscriber. Thank you for Feeny. Bye, donkey. But they're completely disconnected. And it's not just there, Viant. Okay, so last year, when the Manchurian cadaver was sworn in as president in January, 9 days later, the military junta overthrew the democratically elected government of Myanmar. A corrupt government, okay, don't get me wrong, and they had problems, but they overthrew them. That's not the answer. And they imprisoned the president, who's 76, and now they've convicted her for something else. She has to spend the next 11 years in prison, assuming she survives. And they've detained and arrested tens of thousands of intellectuals and business leaders. And what did Joe Biden do? Nothing. 6 weeks after he became president, Putin moved 70,000 troops to the border with Ukraine. What did Joe Biden do? Nothing. Did he make a big statement? No, he's busy castigating Americans for not wearing facial coverings and telling us by July 4th we're all going to be jabbed and we should all go get jabbed. That was his focus last year, none of which has come true and none of which would have made a difference anyway. But instead of focusing on the real issues here, he just ignored it. So now, last year, we gave Ukraine $2.6 billion. So about 35 billion rand is what we gave them for arms last year. That's not unusual. But then when the war started, we immediately gave them another billion. Then 2 weeks ago, we gave them 800 million. Then we gave them last week 800 million. Now he wants $33 billion more. If he had just given them 5 billion last year when Putin moved troops to the border and sent U.S. Special Forces in with big press coverage of them training Ukrainian forces and some joint air things, this never would have happened. Deterrence would have worked if he'd only done that. But now we are co-belligerents in a war and we're already in $40 billion. How many billion more? This is starting to smell like Afghanistan, Iraq. All kinds of money being poured down the drain because people didn't do the right things. It's just crazy what happens with these idiots leading these countries. You said you're in the crap, you're in the cock, we're in the cock too.
Yeah. Yeah, there's no other word for that, Chris. I agree with you.
It's the right word. I know it's a foul word, but it's the right word.
Yeah.
I start to wonder with South Africans, because everyone says gatvol, not just Afrikaners, but I'm starting to wonder if gatvol is strong enough a word to say just how fed up South Africans are with the situation. I think Americans are going to adopt the word gatvol sometime really soon because we are also, we always say we've had it up to here. Well, we're up here somewhere now. It's too much. It's too much.
The only problem. In South Africa, yes, I understand. Gatvol, everybody is gatvol. And they are tired of this bullshit that is going on in the way how things are being managed. And it is the things that is unimportant that are being enforced on the people, like the mask, like the inoculation, the jab. And that type of shit, that is not important in South Africa. What is important is good governance, job creation, but they don't know how. They realize the private sector is the only people that can do it, but they still want to enforce BEE on that. That is destroying the recovery possibilities in South Africa. So, in the end, we are going down. And there will become a day where we will have to take care of ourselves. But if that day is too soon, then we got bigger problems. And that's why I'm always telling the youngsters, be patient, bear the punishment at this stage. But be patient. The opportune moment to react will come. It will arrive. And it will arrive the day when this government has lost total control over the population, the masses, and of course the services, which includes the military and the police. And I won't be surprised if that happens before the end of this year.
Well, actually, Ryan, I have to say, I think the government's already at that stage. They can't stop. They can't react to anything. They've proven it time and again. The question is, will the people rise up in multiple locations simultaneously and overwhelm the government and start going after the government? That's the question. I mean, honestly, we saw in July the feckless response. I mean, how hard, look, I mean, when I talked earlier, it was joking about boasting, but I wasn't really boasting. I mean, how hard was it to predict on June 29th that the supporters of Zuma were not going to tolerate him going to escort prison? They were not happy about it. They were going to dance and they're going to cause trouble and they're going to burn tires and they're going to loot and they're going to harass people. That was not hard to predict, and I predicted it. But why didn't the police predict that? Why weren't police prepared with training, with fuel, with bullets, with body armor, and in positions? And how did the Mui River Plaza come under attack and 100 trucks torched, almost all of which were owned by black South Africans, by the way? How did that happen? Because of the failures. And then radio stations attacked, crematoriums torched. Who torches a crematorium? That's where you burn bodies. That doesn't make any sense. And then stores looted. Looting, okay, theft, but whatever. But a shipment of ammunition destined for Cape Town magically appears in Durban and is looted. What's that all about? How does that happen? How does a ship go towards danger in port when it's unarmed to unload ammunition when it's supposed to be on the other side of the country? All kinds of strange things. Complete breakdown and failure. The SANDF look at it now. The SANDF now. It was 2 weeks after the fact, 17 days, and they only had 400 people on the ground. That was the advance party. My goodness, fine. You could put an advance party. There's your coffee. It's coffee time. She's smiling. You could put an advance party into the deep heart of Angola with the SADF in a matter of 24 hours. And you could get more than 400 troops in there in certainly less than 14 days. Combat ready. This is ridiculous. Got a super chat here. Let me address this real quick. It says, Ku Oosthuizen. Hey, it's Sylvester. Got released from the loony bin on Saturday. Things are going rough, but I'm seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. Let me explain what that is real quick, Vine. That's Sylvester Stalin. That's the Stalin. He goes by that username. He's had some issues, and he's had some concern, and he took himself for mental care to get some help and counseling. And so he's been in, as he describes it, the loony bin, an institution for the past few weeks. He got released on Saturday. We're glad to hear that he's doing okay. And if you need that kind of help, folks, go get it. Go get it. Sometimes you do. Sometimes our brains don't always function the way they're supposed to. Don't be driven to desperation. Do something stupid to yourself. Go get help. So I'm glad to see he's here. I appreciate the super chat too, especially for somebody who just came out of the loony bin and gave a super chat. So thank you for that, Sylvester. Sorry about that, but I had to recognize that, Vine.
No, that's great. That's fine. Yeah, my wife knows exactly when to bring the coffee. That's when we are more or less halfway through our chat. The coffee arrived.
Yep.
And it's a good thing. Keeps me going. But anyway.
Yeah.
The thing, what you are saying is so absolutely correct. They promised 10,000 troops. And there's still only 500 troops deployed. So again, it's promises, and nothing actually happens.
And now it's been three weeks since the flood started. 3 weeks ago.
Yeah. There was an article today which said that the military can't protect their own bases.
Yep.
Now that is unbelievable that a thing like that can happen in a country where we used to have the strongest defense force in Africa. And now it's gone.
Well, not only is it gone, but it's just the military meta specs is a hindrance now. I mean, instead of accomplishing something useful for the nation, they just simply draw on resources. Not much in the way of resource, less than 1% of GDP. But that 1%, if you're not going to have an effective military, why have a military at all? It's not like Namibia, Zimbabwe, Botswana, or Mozambique are going to invade, Of course, I always scratch my head, Gripens, Type 209 diesel submarines, and cruisers and frigates, Hawk lead-in fighter trainers. You needed trucks and prime movers and barracks and ranges and physical fitness and uniforms and discipline and skills. That's what the SANDF needed. But instead, they got white elephants so Jacob Zuma and Sheikh Shabir could steal money and get away with it. It's been 26 years and no justice for the arms deal.
You know what, Chris, they have now almost also to strengthen the police force. And they had approximately 2,500 recruits gathered in Kimberley to start training with. And the training was supposed to happen in a military base.
Right.
Right. Door frames are gone. Toilets has been broken out. There's no showers. There's no running water. There's no food for the people. There's no training material. It is now how many weeks later? And they haven't even started with training.
Yep.
That's the state where we are. And when they are unhappy, they burn whatever is left to be burned. And that happened. Now, have you ever listened to Roger Thiel?
No, I don't know.
Roger Thiel is an American evangelist, and he is not a conservative guy.
Mm-hmm.
But in 1993, he made a speech in Durban about the Rainbow Nation.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, the Rainbow Nation is not going to work. And he said that it will be a complete failure. It will end up in violence and death. And he said, I will give you even a sign. They will start burning everything. Now, if anyone wants to do himself or herself a favor, go and watch that YouTube of Roger Thiel. It's an hour and a half long. For an hour, he made excuses as to why he have to bring this message to South Africa. And then in the last 30 minutes, he actually delivered the message. But it's worth to listen to. Because whatever Roger Thiel has said then, we are seeing today in South Africa. We are experiencing today in South Africa. And just remember, he's not a South African.
Mm-hmm.
He's from the US.
Yep. Well, in 1994, I was just a very young captain in 94. But in 1994, what I told people, because they asked me about South Africa, and they knew I had an interest in Africa, I said South Africa needs one thing above everything else. It needs patience. And that's assuming that the ruling party gets it all right. And what they have to get right are the following three things. Then later I added a fourth thing. But 1994, and I still stick to this. First thing they had to do was fix policing. They had to turn the police into a community policing force that protected all South Africans and had relationships with people in neighborhoods so that people would trust the cops. They're not just people who drive through occasionally and investigate things and you're disconnected from them. If you know the cop on your beat and you can trust that cop, then that's going to prevent crime and it's going to get people more inclined to share. So you have to have community policing. That's the first thing. You got to fix it. Fix the police. Because I mean, if we're honest about this, fine. The police were very effective under the National Party, but their mission wasn't to protect this higher society at large. I mean, that may have been the stated mission, but we have to be honest, they largely protected the minority population communities. Most white South Africans had no idea about the level of crime because they never experienced it because their communities were pretty well protected back then. But they had to transform from that to one to serve all society, which was a challenge, but that should be job one. Job two is they have to fix education. And the reason I said they fix education is not because of apartheid, although that's part of it, but because many of the people in the ANC who will now be leading ministries and leading the government, becoming officials, have poor education, because in 76 they stopped going to school. They looted and burned in Soweto. In 85 they did the same thing. So you have 2 generations of ANC stalwarts who have poor to no education because they went abroad after it being in those uprisings and they didn't get a proper education. So they're not literate like Jacob Zuma. They don't have critical thinking skills. And I'm not going to blame them for that. I'm just state the obvious. So now you have to fix education and teach kids to read and write and to think, not just learn rote memorization. That's the second thing. And the third thing is that if they're going to shake down big corporations like Anglo-American and all these other corporations like Old Mutual, if they're going to do that, then the equity they take shouldn't go to Patrice Motsepe and Toka Sexwale and Cyril Ramaphosa and all these other elite cadres. It should have gone into a national sovereign wealth fund managed by an independent third party, and then that money could have grown and paid dividends to South Africans, making it an ownership society rather than a welfare society. Those 3 things. Now, the last thing, and I never added early, but I added later on because I hadn't thought it. I'll be honest, I didn't think about this in 94. I added towards the end of the century, which should have been more obvious to me, is that I'm a capitalist and I believe in the free market and I hate state-owned entities. So I later said that the parastatals all have to be unwound and spun off as private enterprise. South African Airways, Eskom, Transnet, Airports Company South Africa, all these things need to be unwound. And then Sanrail, you can't, it's not going to work. And if they had done those things, but in order for those things to work, I said in 94, it's going to take 15 to 25 years before we see massive change. But if you do it right, you'll see it. People will be educated, jobs will be created, there'll be entrepreneurialism, people will have services, but none of that was done. It went completely the opposite direction. They're trying to make more things government-owned, and they came up with race-based legislation, which has divided the country and made it impossible for people with any skills to make money. So what do? They go to the UK, they go to Australia, they go to New Zealand, they go to the US. Elon Musk, perfect case. Anyway, case closed.
Yeah. I could have driven an electric vehicle by now if Elon had stayed in South Africa, but
I don't know if you want an electric vehicle. You live far away from everybody. You
No,
wouldn't make it to Bloemfontein with that thing.
I'm joking about that.
I know you're joking. I'm just having a go at you.
I prefer fossil fuels vehicles.
Ah, that's right. I prefer that internal combustion engine. That's what I like. You know, when you step on the gas, you hear it, you know it. I've got to be very conscious now. I mean, I've always been, but especially conscious when I cross the road, if I'm looking at my phone or something like that, because I always relied on my ears. But now I can't rely on my ears. I've got to look every time. There's all these damn electric vehicles. You can't hear them. They just roll up like a bicycle and roll over top you.
Yeah.
No, they're everywhere here.
The first time, I only was in the Netherlands once.
Okay.
My eldest daughter is staying there, and we went across for her marriage, and it was chaos because there's next to the roads is a little road.
For the bicycles.
I thought that was for people to walk.
No, it's not.
only to be pushed aside and plucked aside away whenever a bicycle is coming along.
And they come all the time, man. Nobody rides bicycles more than the Dutch. Maybe Singapore, but the Dutch, they've got it. I mean, that's exactly right. There's a lane for bicycles, and you better not get in it.
Yeah, well, it's a nice side to it as well. I mean, the girls are riding their bikes with little short skirts and everything. So, yeah, it's nice. But I must say, when we arrived at the wedding venue, we opened the door to get out, and bang, bicycles into the car door.
No.
And those people was angry at us.
I bet they were. What's wrong with you? What are you, country bumpkins? And then you probably spoke Afrikaans, and they said they are from the country. They're Boers.
So yeah, it was. I know what you mean when you say they're driving up silently like a bicycle.
Yep.
That happened with us there. Yeah.
Well, you know, Kruger just said that Tesla can't come to South Africa because of load shedding. But look, you could put it in the Karoo or in Uppington there and get some solar photovoltaic panels, and in 33 days your battery will be charged on your Tesla.
Yeah, 33 days. No.
Oh my, we're having fun today, aren't we? What?
Yeah. No, there's a lot of stuff that won't work in South Africa.
Yeah, including the ANC.
Might work elsewhere, but not here.
Oh, have you heard? I rebranded the African National Congress. Did you hear about this? Have you heard about this? No, I did. So, a lot of senior ANC officials are, excuse me, talking about how there's going to be a renaissance, a rebirth of the party at the party Congress later this year. Okay, that's what they're talking about. So I figured since they're going to do that, of course, the ANC wasn't always called the ANC. They had another name initially when they were founded in 1912, and they changed it later, the African National Congress. But it was a Natal native, or not, it was the native South African native, something anyway. But they changed the name to the ANC. So I think it's time to change the name again. And they should go from ANC, the African National Congress, to RAIN, English RAIN. Hashtag RAIN is my campaign. It's race hustling, arrogance, ineptitude, and negligence. That is the ANC. So I think they should rename them RAIN.
Ineptitude was the word I was looking for.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep, ineptitude. Yeah. So it's race hustlers, arrogance, ineptitude, and negligence. RAIN. That's my new. So I made a little poster for it and a picture of Cyril on there. Hashtag RAIN.
but the irony is even bigger in Namibia, where SWAPO demand the change of the name Southwest Africa to Namibia. But they remain the Southwest Africa People's Organization, SWAPO.
Exactly. Isn't that comical? They're still SWAPO, but you can't call it Southwest Africa.
Yeah.
It's okay, though. I mean, Namibia is not a bad name. It's named after the rivers or the desert. So it's not. It could have been worse. It could be something like Azania. Amandla. Sorry, I was channeling my inner Cyril there, my inner hippopotamus there.
Yeah.
Did you see the footage of that, though, yesterday from Royal Bafokeng in Rustenburg? I've been there, by the way, Royal Bafokeng, several times. In fact, I was there for the World Cup in 2010 when the U.S. played Ghana. I was at that stadium. It's a nice stadium. They've taken the platinum money, and they put it to good use there. But I saw the I guess you did see it because you're talking about the small crowd. I mean, that thing holds like 40, 50,000 people. There were like 600 people in front of the stage. The stadium was completely empty. That speaks volumes. And then the people who were there were very angry. But did you see the video of him actually being rushed off the stage? I was in stitches. I had to go to the loo. I almost wet myself. It was so funny.
Yeah. But I will be surprised if he survives until the end of the year.
Oh, I'm with you on that one. I've predicted for some time that Cyril Ramaphosa's days are numbered. Actually, I'm surprised he's gotten away with this as long as he has, because people have to remember, and I predicted this, that he was going to face difficulty back when he won the presidency of the ANC in November 2017, when they had the Congress or the conference, and Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma lost him by 35 votes. Or 70 votes, 70 votes. So if 36 people had voted for her and not for him, she would have been the head of the ANC and would have been president. Oh my God, you think it's bad now. Imagine what NDZ is a president. But then the radical economic transformation would have complete control of the country, and the state capture would have continued, and we'd be even worse down the road. Not that we're in great shape, but I've predicted for a long time that he's in trouble. And you could see it with the formation of his cabinet. His cabinet was full of Zuma stalwarts. People like Magashule work, Secretary General, not in the cabinet, but Secretary General, and all the people in his cabinet, old fossils that were part of the Zuma administration who hung around. If he was a strong leader, he could have muscled them aside and picked his own people he trusted, but he didn't do that. And as a result, we've had, this is the word, in sclerosis, where, just ossification, and just that's what's happened in South African government, and things have gotten worse and worse. He is a weak leader. He's a buffoon. He is a panderer, and he will say whatever people expect him to say or whatever he's paid to say. And that's one of the reasons why the country's in such trouble. But yeah, he's in trouble. I'd be surprised to see him last throughout the year. I thought the last couple months with the charges coming out and prosecutions taking place now finally against Magashule and others that we'd see some. But he's not sidelining enough of these people from the RET faction to get rid of them. There's a comment here very quickly I want to get from Errol van Niekerk. He said, I've not heard two people talk more sense than tonight's program. Thanks to Salute. Well, Errol van Niekerk, bye donkey. Thank you so much for that. You should tune in more frequently to Vian's program, to my program. Of course, for his, you're going to have to understand Afrikaans, but for mine, you can listen to English. But and you should check out my old videos. Nothing but sense talked in this program, and sometimes get a little excited with the rants. But no, I agree with you. I would be surprised to see Cyril Ramaphosa be president on December 31st this year. I'm just saying.
No, true. But I want to come back on I do sometimes speak English on my channel. I do broadcast in English.
Never when I tune in, it's always Afrikaans, and I have to listen. I'm like this. I got to pay very close attention to make sure I understand.
Yeah, no, but I did, and it's interesting that when I do that, there's immediately some Afrikaans-speaking people saying, "Why are you doing this in English?" But what people don't understand is there's just as many English-speaking supporters in South Africa than I have Afrikaans-speaking supporters.
Yep.
So I must accommodate them as well. And you must realize that you need both in order in the end to survive. You cannot push people away because of the language that they are speaking, because sometimes it's not out of choice that they are speaking a different language, but depends on the house he grew up. But English Afrikaans speaking people fought side by side Portuguese speaking people during the border war. So to me, it's one and the same people. Just to comment on that. But yeah, I'm guilty. I'm making more Afrikaans videos than I'm making in English. And that's just because sometimes I lost my thread when I'm in English, especially if I lost one word, then I struggle to continue.
No, but the good news is we complement each other well, because usually when you're struggling for that word in English, I either know it or you'll tell me in Afrikaans, and then I know that one, and we sort it out pretty quickly. So it works out pretty well. But listen, I'm agree with you 100% there. And the thing that people have to not lose sight of is that, there's also an international audience here. There are people around the world who interested in what you've got to say, to hear your experiences, and almost none of them speak Afrikaans. Now, people say, well, they should learn Afrikaans. Well, listen, I speak 6 languages, and understand 6 languages of varying degrees of proficiency, 3 fluently, and Afrikaans is one of the ones I understand. But it's a struggle for me to listen to Afrikaans, particularly for people from the West Transvaal. I have a little trouble there. That's a little bit hard for me, So I'm sure that Koos Delare would have been a challenge for me to listen to with his accent when he was alive. But I think that when I come into the airport at OR Tambo or Cape Town, they're going to mistake me for Koos Delare with this beard. But anyway, but seriously, it's fine for people to learn language, but English is an international language, whether people like it or not, and you can reach a huge audience that way. I don't do my programs in German. I could do them. I could do them in French as well, and I could do them poorly in other languages, but I could do those 3 languages very well. But the biggest audience are in English, and I throw those languages in. And Wyatt, I think people would be hard-pressed to find a bigger proponent for Afrikaans language who's not a first language Afrikaans speaker than me. People know that I promote the language endlessly. I think it's a wonderful language. I think it's an African creation, and it's a very fascinating language. And so I go out of my way to promote the music and the language, encourage people to learn it. So the fact that people don't speak it shouldn't be held against them. I think people making an effort to listen to your content, people should be grateful for that. And by the way, for the 200 plus people currently here, if you're not a subscriber, please push that button and become a subscriber. It doesn't cost you anything. Trying to grow the channel for you. Those you don't know, my channel was 23,000 after 5 months a couple years ago and was surging upwards. I was bigger than Wyan's channel. I was big, almost bigger than Roman Kabanak's channel. I was bigger than the Democratic Alliance. I had 4,000 more subscribers than Democratic Alliance. And then YouTube blew me out of the water, deleted my channel under fraudulent conditions. I created a new channel, and we struggle with the shadow ban to keep growing. So thank you to the large audience today. Please become a subscriber. Even if you don't watch the content, help me grow the numbers. And it's not about numbers. It's like, well, mine's bigger than yours. It's not about that, folks. You have to understand that I interview people around the world, people of note, politicians, celebrities, people who are involved in business and agriculture. And when you go to somebody and say, hey, I'd like you to come on my program tonight, I've got 350 subscribers, you're not going to get the head of the Union Bank of Switzerland to come on your channel. But if you've got 25, 30, 40, 50,000 subscribers, say, listen, I'd like to give you a chance to talk about what you're doing here on my program. People will come to your channel and you'll get quality guests. For me, it's always been about getting the most diverse and quality group of people to come on my program as possible. And I've changed my channel a little bit. Now we have regular programs like this one, Fireside with the Colonels. We also have Kenako, the Call of Africa, which I do with Dumodenga and Koketso Retsane, 2 conservative black South Africans. And I also do Answer the Question with my pal there on Thursdays. Anyway, so if you're not a subscriber, please take a second to become one. It doesn't cost you a penny, folks. It doesn't cost you 1 rand. It costs you nothing. No shekels, no rubles. Hey, well, the ruble's doing well now. It's recovered. But anyway, so sorry for the digressing there, Vine. But it's people who prepare. They're going to be the leaders when this all goes to crap. What I mean by that is that you're going to have a lot of people when it. We saw this in July. When we saw people rise up in communities who were prepared for the insurrection, and they organized community defense on no notice, without any planning other than their own planning, and it actually was effective in places like Phoenix, although that's very contentious right now politically. But it was effective there. It was effective at Amazimtoti, in Durban, and other places, and Peter Maritzburg, where people went out there, black, white, and brown, and defended their communities against people who were trying to loot and torch and burn. So leaders are going to rise, and it's going to be people prepared. Go ahead.
Now, if Phoenix is an issue, a political issue, and it shouldn't be, but the government needs to take note that this will happen when the country becomes lawless. What other choice does the guys of Phoenix have than to protect their property?
Yeah, the police weren't protecting them.
Exactly. You can go into the law and you can discuss it with lawyers and advocates and all the people that knows the law very well. And you can ask them, to what point can you allow people to destroy everything in the way? When does it become your duty to react? Now, they can take those people to court because they protected their property. But if your property is in danger, you are actually allowed to shoot to kill. The problem is, if you do that, you will go to prison, especially if you are white.
Yep.
The Phoenix situation is, interestingly, more Indian-orientated group of people. That they did not expect. They always expected it will be the whites that is fighting back.
It's because they're not very well informed.
That would have created another incident that will promote even racism much more. But to their surprise and shock, it was the Indians in Phoenix who actually did it. For years and years, they've been watching the so-called far-right South Africans. They never watched the Indians. And the Indians built up large numbers of weapons, ammunition. They are kitted out, ready to fight. And in fact, we are not on the conservative side. But in situations like this, you will always see certain leaders rising out of the community. On the conservative side in South Africa, there's a lot of people that wants dynamic leadership to come to the front. The danger and the problem of that dynamic leadership is, today, in the country that we are living in, is that you will end up with your ass in prison.
Yeah.
So you will only see the rise of proper leaders once everything has collapsed. Like you said, in Natal, during the looting, there was peoples and communities that has rose up. And which is correct. That's when it will be. So when South Africa went into anarchy, you will see the natural leaders rising. But to do that now is to commit suicide.
Yeah, to do that now is just to draw attention, have yourself taken out of the mix, and discredited illegitimately. That's what's going to happen now. Yeah.
I mean, I am only warning the people about what is to come. I'm preparing a very large group to face what is coming. A group of people that exist out of conservative people, both English, Portuguese, and Afrikaans speaking, to be able to assist the people who is not prepared when the time comes. I'm trying to save a nation, to save people. That's our mission. And yet, crime intelligence are watching my every move.
Yep.
Are monitoring everything I do or say. So it's a thin line between being correct and being wrong, but it's also a thin line to be a leader and rather stay below the radar.
Yep. You know, it's you hit that spot on. It's absolutely true. The case. It's gosh, it's frustrating because I don't think people realize that. You know, the ANC, when they want to conduct intelligence operations, have been proven to be quite effective in the past. And I bring the example of the Boermag. You know, the Boermag were infiltrated by more government agents than there were Boermag members. It was almost reminiscent of the civil rights groups in the 1960s, where Army and local law enforcement and FBI were embedded in student groups and civil rights groups. And there were more of them, agents, you know, from different agencies, than there were actual perpetrators. But in the Boermag, they were outnumbered by government agents, white and others who were there, and they disrupted it and tore it apart. But then the same intelligence services can't identify that there's going to be an insurrection in KZN. At a minimum, they should have been worried about trouble at Nkandla, around Nkandla. But they're just so incompetent. It's just unbelievable what's going on here. Now, Chris Ellingson says, if they try and burn down your house while you or your family are in it, I think self-defense will be justified. Well, Chris, you have a valid point. In America, many states, because remember, we have a federal system, many states have a stand your ground law, which means you can defend your property. And that couple in Missouri who were prosecuted, that attorney, he actually is in a state with a stand your ground law, and they were accused of committing crimes when people broke into their gated property, wandered around threatening to murder them. So they came out with rifles and pistols, and they didn't point them at anybody. They just had them at the ready. They were charged and incarcerated for committing crimes when they were following the law. So I appreciate your sentiment, Chris, and I know where you're coming from, but I don't know the details because it was in Afrikaans and I couldn't find the report. But I understand that Willem Petzer was trying to help some lady in Namibia who was attacked in her home. They tried to rape and murder her. She was beaten in the head with a hammer, and she managed to shoot and kill her assailant. If I understand correctly, she was arrested for murder. Now,
Yes.
if you're in your home and someone's trying to murder and rape you, what are you supposed to do? Just die? That's what the governments of South Africa and Namibia want. They want you to just die. There's no justice for Edward Neumeister, a 76-year-old Austrian immigrant to South Africa who'd been there for 5 decades, built a German-style restaurant in KwaZulu-Natal, which was closed because of lockdown. No money at the restaurant, been closed for months, and a panga-wielding thug came when he went out to feed his dogs in the morning and attacked him. Hit him so many times with a panga under the armpit. He had a mortal wound, blood pouring out. The guy went into the kitchen to attack his partner, who was in her 60s, and the man, mortally wounded, bleeding profusely, chopped up everywhere, in agony, no doubt, stumbled to his feet, got into the kitchen, lunged at the attacker. His partner was able to escape as a consequence, but he was cut to ribbons and pieces. No justice, no charges, no one accused in that case. And I can run through a list of thousands of these murders like this. It's absolutely insane. What was Edward Neumeister supposed to do? If he had shot that guy, he probably would have spent the rest of his life in prison. This is twisted. It must be the rule of law, and the ANC has no interest in the rule of law, because if you have the rule of law, then you can't let cadres steal at will, and that is the bottom line.
I can't say it better, Chris.
I was going to say, I left you speechless.
But that is the problem, you know. If this whole thing of farm attacks, which they say is not happening, but which is happening, if it is just to steal something, you can understand it. But the brutality and the violence that goes with the act is completely incomprehensible. I mean, why burn a person with an iron of boiling water and then kill them? But why torture? Why?
Because it's a terrorism campaign, Wyatt. You and I both know this, and people won't say that. I've been saying it all along. There are not just common criminals and people seeking revenge. Those are small numbers of these farm attacks. Many of these are organized crime, and they are syndicates that are intent on robbing and destroying the structure of South Africa's economy, land ownership, land tenure, and to terrorize people. What was the purpose of torturing and hanging Brendan Horner? He wasn't a farm owner. Brendan Horner was 21 years old, celebrated his 21st birthday, went to the farm where he worked as a manager. He owned no land. He was a farm manager working for someone else, earning his way in life, 20 years old, very excited, headed back home, and he's intercepted. We don't know who yet because the two accused apparently did not do it, but there's suspicion that the police are involved in part of cattle rustling. He is attacked. He is tortured, stabbed, strangulated, and then hung from a fence post. If you're going to kill him, you kill him. You don't hang him from a fence post unless you want to send a message. That was a terrorist message. That's what that was all about. Just like the EFF attacking clicks locations over a hair ad, over a Tresemme ad that came from Europe that was posted on the Clicks website by a black employee who made a mistake. It was insensitive. It was rude to women with black hair. I get it. And they apologized. They removed it within a couple of hours. But no, EFF has to exhort their followers to go out and terrorize 43 Clicks locations. By the way, a company owned by black South Africans. It's a BEE enterprise. They attacked Clicks. One was petrol bombed. And all 43 locations were ransacked, looted, and elderly patients going to collect their life-saving medication from the chemist could not get it at Boots because these terrorists were blocking their entrance and scaring them away. And no charges, not a single charge has been filed to this day for that terrorist insurrection incited by the EFF. There is no rule of law. You can't defend yourself. Folks, wake up. Wake up. I'm tired of people saying it ain't happening because it is happening on a daily basis across the country.
Yeah. But you must remind yourself every time. I've asked the questions why. I know why. Mm-hmm. Because that's how they are. They did it in the Congo. They did it in all those places.
Mozambique, Angola.
You name it. They have done it. And they will do it here. It is as if once they started on a looting spree or a mission, or call it what you want, it is something is blanking out all realistic thought. And they just go crazy. And there's no deterrence. South Africa should bring back, they said should bring back the death penalty, but then
do you want the ANC to have the death penalty? That's the question.
Yeah. The problem is there will probably more people who defend themselves going to the gallows than the culprits.
Yep, that's the real problem. There's some comments here. Let me get these before we run out of time here. Let's see. So Anonymous Lex, Colonel Toit says he's prepping people for what is to come. Now I want to ask, how does one get more info, how to join, how to train? Since July unrest, I've been asking and been misdirected. Well, Anonymous Lex, I'm sorry that you've been misdirected, but there are lots of places to get information on this. There are lots of preppers out there, but Wynand Toit is associated with the Sightlanders organization, which is an early warning. If I characterize it correct, it's an early warning organization. And if that's correct, maybe we can direct him towards the Sightlander site. I'm not trying to recruit for Sightlanders. I'm just, since the question was asked, where can people find out more information about how to be prepared for whatever may come?
Chris, first of all, we are a national emergency plan.
Okay, so a little more broad than what I just said.
National emergency plan, which we have been working on for years. And in the last 2.5 years, we have actually started with, I'm in charge of the sideline defense, which means I recruit mainly old military people, former military people, and young people, which we then combined into a group so that we can be able to defend the territory where the people can go to. If you look at the Congo, if you look at northern Rhodesia, those places, Katanga, Uganda, the people fled to the south. They came to South Africa. Yep. There's nowhere to flee. So we have to create an area where it is safe for people to come to and where we can protect them. But for people to find out more about this is that we got a call center in Uppington. The numbers are available on the website of the Zuidlanders. And as from tomorrow morning, we are broadcasting on the radio. They can also get the details on my YouTube channel. Otherwise, people can contact me, but we got a call center that is handling all the things people want to know. But I've heard something about training there. Am I correct?
Say again?
In the guy's question.
Yes.
Was something about training. Am I right?
Yes, training. He wasn't specific, but yeah, training.
Now, if you do training, you are overstepping.
Yep. You got to be very careful there, because if you're doing paramilitary, military training, you become a threat to the government, and that puts you in trouble.
Exactly. So people can do training by joining training centers. Certain security companies provide training to people if they want training. But we, as the Zuidland Defense and Zuidlanders, we don't do training. We are a national emergency plan for once total chaos broke out in South Africa. People don't know where to go, what to do. That's when we come into play.
Well, there's actually, I think to answer that question more directly for folks, there's a lot of things from a personal security standpoint that you can do from training that aren't a threat to the government. They're for your personal safety. You have to contact a security service that's somewhere near you. Look them up online or in the yellow pages if you've got such a thing left in South Africa. I haven't seen our yellow pages in years, but look them up. For instance, I was often asked about a year and a half ago about some personal safety techniques. Of course, like yourself, I know you work special forces, so you probably had similar training, but of course, I've had courses where you are trained specifically to prevent abduction and things like that. So, I got to go to the range one day and fire 500 rounds from a 9mm at targets less than a meter away. And you know what I'm talking about, because you have to be prepared to shoot at a target that close to you so you can escape. Also, evasion techniques, how to overcome anti-lock braking system so you can control a vehicle, how to direct spin outs, things like that. All these different things, and much more which we can't tell about. That's not the training for the average person. But what I can say is that there are things you can do. So, for instance, in South Africa, did you want to jump in? Go ahead, and then I'll come back. When your hand comes up like this, I know you got a point, so go ahead.
Yeah. The very important thing, Chris, is that you must just remember the fact that you own a gun does not protect your life.
Oh, good Lord, no, especially if you know what you're doing with it.
Yeah. If you got a gun, the main thing is, and if you carry it, you must be willing to use it. Yeah. Otherwise, you will be killed with your own gun. Yeah. So if you draw that gun, you must be willing to shoot. You don't draw the gun before you want to shoot. So one of the things that is very important in South Africa is mentally preparing yourself to do a thing. You talked about 1 meter, 2 meters away, close range type of firing at a person. Most people haven't seen the results of a guy getting shot.
Let alone at that range.
Yeah. And it can be a shock. If you have never seen a person actually got shot, maybe just wounded or even killed. Mm-hmm. So you must prepare yourself mentally that when you draw your gun, you must go into action.
And you must complete the action because there may be more than one assailant.
Exactly. So that's a thing that you must decide before the time. You must relive the moment in your mind, or actually repeat the thought, what am I going to do if this happens? What is the move I'm going to do? And if you prepare yourself like that, you will do it, or at least to an extent, you
will have what we call muscle memory.
Yeah, it will come into your mind from your subconscious, and it's not a problem. As I've always tell people, don't worry. The fact that you have been in the military 30 years ago, I can promise you, the first shot you hear, those stuff that you learned as an 18-year-old will return to you like this.
Like riding a bike.
It's like riding a bike. It will return.
It returns to you, yeah. No, it's, there's other things too, Vine. So, for instance, people were asking these questions, and I'm not offering security services, but some very basic things. I can't tell you the number of times I've seen people pulling up to their gated house in Pretoria or somewhere like that in Sandton, and they get carjacked because they open the gate while they're waiting in front of it. You don't do that. Simple solution here is if you have the flexibility and the time, it's a good habit to get into to drive past your property if you have a safe place to turn around out of sight and observe your gate, because someone might be on the inside already, jump the wall or something like that. It's just a good habit to get into. So you drive by, look at it. Okay, things look okay. Turn around and come back. And as you approach, you have the timing down so that you open the gate and you drive straight in and turn the vehicle straight around for an easy exit. You don't want to be caught with your back to the gate. Now, not everybody has that possibility because some properties are smaller. But if you have that flexibility, you want to come in and turn around so you can drive away immediately or run over an assailant. But you don't want to be sitting outside your gate on the street because you will become a target. And by the way, it's not just in South Africa. It's common there. But we just saw this thing happen here in the States where a gentleman was drugged to his death because they carjacked his car. I think it was in Philadelphia or Houston. These kids, these teenagers came and stole the car and the person couldn't get out in time and they were drugged to their death and run over by the cars in broad daylight. So you have to be cognizant. That's a small thing. But most of us take that for granted because we didn't grow up expecting the world to be a horrible place. But guess what, ladies and gentlemen? I don't mean to frighten you, but the world is a horrible place full of terrible people who care not one iota for the struggles and challenges of your parents conceiving you, of birthing you, of raising you, of changing your nappies, teaching you right from wrong, educating you, and getting you to the stage in life where you're an adult. It was a tremendous pouring of resources into getting you to adulthood. And these people don't care. They don't care. They don't care. You are between them and whatever instant gratification they want, whether it's your car, the 100 Rand that's in your wallet, or just the get even nonsense because they've been inculcated with some race-based stupidity. And by the way, we're not just talking about people of color who are criminals, we're talking about all kinds of criminals. You have to protect yourself against everybody. If someone seems dodgy, odds are they're dodgy, folks. Trust your first instinct. We survived as a species because we knew that, oh, look, it's a kitty. No, that's a saber-toothed cat. Don't pet it because it'll eat you. And the people that went and petted the saber-toothed cats got eaten. And we are the descendants of the smart ones who survived. So you got to understand when Darwin is warning you there that something's wrong, something's probably wrong. Better safe than sorry.
The one thing that I think is very necessary in South Africa is that the trauma, is that the right word?
Say again?
Trauma.
Trauma. Well, actually, all things being equal, the way you pronounce it's the way we should pronounce it, but English is a funny language, so we say trauma.
Yeah, okay, but trauma is the biggest danger to all of us.
Yeah.
A woman's secure place is her house. If you have to leave your house to be in a safe place, I mean, that happened in Kirkwood, where they have to take the families away, get them to a safe place. You must first ask, do you have a safe place to go? Are you mentally prepared to leave your home? Are you mentally prepared as a family to handle the trauma? I think that's a big responsibility on all South Africans. That's the thing that we must prepare. You can have as much food stocked up, water stocked up, ammunition stocked up. But if you are not mentally prepared and expect the trauma that will follow by leaving your house, you've already lost.
Yeah.
You must prepare yourself. And we are getting closer and closer to that point. But anyway, Chris, yeah.
Yeah, we're going to have to wrap up here, but that's absolutely a great point. But let me just relate one story, a war story. We haven't done any war stories on this one. It's not in combat, but it's just a diplomatic war story so that it makes sense to people and show you how quickly a situation can change and how if you're prepared and you have your wits about you, you may come out of it okay. So I was in Liberia. I was in charge of rebuilding the armed force of Liberia. The performer Akon, who's a musical performer, he's very well known here in the States. His family came from Senegal. Huge performer. Anyway, but Akon went to Liberia. And the cell phone company, which was half Israeli, half American, that ran their Cellcom, they sponsored the tour. They spent like $600,000 with promotion and his fee and everything else. Anyway, this is a country that's been beset by 13 years of civil war. They hadn't had any musical performers there in ages. So he comes there, and I went down because the ministry contacted me. The army was under my operational control. The ministry didn't control the army until we finished it. It was our responsibility. So the minister called me and said, hey, I'd like to let Akon meet some of the troops. I said, well, it's a bit of a drive back out to where the base is, but we have the troops here in town going to the officer candidate school. He goes, perfect. So that's just a 5-minute drive. So I went down there and I met Akon. He was a really nice guy. He's short. He's a nice guy. We chatted, and he was chatting with me the whole time because I'm an American. He's from the States. And I said, listen, did you come to talk to Liberians? So he started talking to Liberians. And when he finished, I walk over and he tries to put his arm around the guy, Avri, he runs the cell phone company. He puts his arm around me, but his arms are way up here because he's so short and we're tall. And he says, Avri, he says, Colonel, are the troops coming to the show tonight? I said, listen, Akon, they'd love to come, but these guys make $90 a month U.S. in salary. Your tickets are $25. They can't afford that. And he says, Avri, what can we do? Can you hook the colonel up with some tickets? And he goes, absolutely. How many do you need? I said, well, we have 2,000 soldiers, maybe 100, and then we could give it to 50 soldiers, and they could bring their significant others or spouses. And they said, okay. Anyway, long story short, I had to go to the cell phone company. The guy told me to go see his brother. I got to see his brother. He's like, he didn't tell me about this. There's no tickets here. You have to go out to the stadium. So I had to go out to the stadium. I tried to get people to go with me. The Marine attaché was tied up. I tried to get the Nigerian soldiers who were guards for the general. They were busy. They couldn't come. I couldn't get anybody. So I drove out there in my armored Land Cruiser with ballistic glass and armored. So it's heavy. I get out there and I go to the gate, which is on the side for VIP entries, so I go in and get the tickets. And they've got the gate blocked. There's some police there, and there's some people trying to break in because they're trying to get in the show for free. So they're pushing on the gate, and the police are, with sambucks, like swinging like this and chasing them back. And there's about 50 people there. So I pull up, and I leave enough space in front of me so that, because, good judgment. If I have to pull out, I don't get bumper to bumper. But behind me, about a moment later, the Red Cross, International Committee of the Red Cross vehicle comes up and comes right up on my bumper. So I can't back up. All I can do is pull forward. Well, in the meantime, in about 3 to 5 minutes, this went from 50 people to over 5,000 people, Viant. Just a crowd came out of nowhere. It was like ants just coming out of the woodwork, and suddenly we're surrounded. Well, now they were getting angry, and I couldn't get out of there unless I ran over someone, so I just patiently waited for them at the gate, and they start jumping on our vehicles. Now, my vehicle's armored, so they're going to have a hard time even flipping my vehicle and getting in it with ballistic glass. But they managed to climb on it, and they broke the mirror off the driver's side because they're hanging on. That's how much weight they're putting on it. And they're jumping on it. They're covering up, like the sun disappears because they're on my windscreen. Now, I could have driven away, but I would have killed people. And that would have been a diplomatic incident. So you can imagine the concern, the pucker factor, that, I could be murdered by a mob here, But I was trained on how to deal with these situations, and I was comfortable that my vehicle would protect me, and it did. And then all of a sudden, it was like sunlight came because the cops, seeing that they were jumping all over people's cars, and other people were in greater jeopardy than me because they didn't have armored vehicles. The cops came out, and it was like Moses in the parting of the Red Sea. And the crowd just did like this, like cockroaches. They spread, they opened the gate, and we all drove in very quickly. But my point there is that in less than 5 minutes, we went from 50 people to 5,000 angry people willing to flip cars over because they want to watch a concert for free. That's how insane things can get, folks, just like that. And I've seen it when a kid ran out in front of my car in Addis Ababa and hit, I hit the kid, but the kid hit me, ran from the side, ran right into my car, so I didn't hit them head on. I stopped to render assistance, and my car was swamped by 50 people that you didn't even know were there, coming and beating on my SUV because they assumed I murdered somebody and I was a Westerner. So I had to pull away safely, get away to safe refuge. I got to the Sheraton, which was safe refuge, had security there. I parked, I called the embassy. I told them to inform the police. They checked, the kid was fine. It all got sorted. But if I'd stayed there and rendered assistance, I probably would have been beaten to death in the street because a kid ran out in front of my car trying to make some money. But, you've got to be prepared for these things, folks, whether it's in your car, entering your property, or in your home. Someone breaks in, you got to rehearse what's going to happen because if you're caught unawares and unprepared, fear takes hold and paralysis sets in and you become a victim. Go ahead, Vine, and we'll wrap up.
What you have experienced in Liberia and in Addis Ababa is no different from what you will experience in South Africa now.
Great. When can I get there?
20 years ago, it would have looked impossible to happen.
Yep.
But now exactly the same situation arrives here. I had a similar situation in Angola, where a kid ran in front of my vehicle late afternoon, and I had to swerve sharply to the left, and I missed the kid. But I buggered up my vehicle. I smashed it into the pavement, and then over the pavement into a tree. And if I haven't done that, I would have been in big problems. Because then you have to pay the families and everybody that's around, and pay the police and stuff like that. But Chris, no, I think we had a good night. In 14 days' time is when? In 14 days.
Today's the 2nd, so the 16th.
Yeah, okay.
May 16th.
Okay, the 16th can work, yeah.
Yep. Okay. So we'll look forward to doing this again fortnightly. Fireside with the Colonels on the 16th of May. We'll schedule a plan for that. And anyway, so Wyatt, as always, it's a distinct pleasure. These are among my most favorite conversations with you. Even when we're not telling old soldier war stories, it's always an entertaining time. So any last thoughts before we wrap up? I think we've pretty much hit apogee, as pilots like to say.
Yeah. No, I will end by saying, stay awake, be aware, and be safe. More and more in South Africa nowadays. But we will survive. That due to the fact that we can think, can plan, and that there is measures in place that can assist people.
Excellent. Folks, there you go. Colonel Toit from South Africa in the Northern Cape talking about what's going on and what can be. Vine, thanks a lot. I'll let you drop off there, or I'll just put you in the waiting room and you can drop off at your own leisure there. Thank you so much, and we'll chat in 2 weeks. All right, he's gone. Oops.
Okay, Chris.
Cheers.
Good night.
Good night. All right, so that was Colonel Toit, folks. This is Colonel Chris Wyatt in central Pennsylvania. Thanks for tuning in. A lot of new people came tonight. I'm not sure why, if they came because Vine asked them to come. If he did, my thanks to Vine for asking them to come over. Whatever the case is, it was a pleasure to have you all join us today for this program. It's every other week we do this, and I think it's informative and enjoyable. So if you've got questions about how to protect yourself and what steps to take, there are a lot of different organizations out there in South Africa especially. There are 2.4 million people working in the security services in South Africa, providing guard duty and training and things like that, and putting fences up and all sorts of things. 2.4 million people out of a population of 59 million. So there's someone out there who can help you. But don't become a statistic. Protect yourself and your family, your loved ones, and think security all the time. When you're on a beach, you should be thinking about security. I'm not trying to make your life miserable, but honestly, it's just a matter of time before all the people are hanging out on the beach and someone comes along with firearms and just, robs everybody on the beach, if that hasn't happened already. And broad daylight crimes are happening around the world. Here in the U.S., it's shocking. It's happening too here. And you need to be prepared for it. The criminals have no compunction against making you a victim and taking your life if necessary. They don't consider the consequences when they take those actions. And remember, criminals, not all of them are well practiced at what they do. Some of them are just as fearful as you, and fearful people do stupid things, and people get killed as a consequence. Anyway, folks, thanks a lot for tuning in. I'll be back with Night Owls in about an hour and 45 minutes. An hour and 45 minutes from now, I'll be back with Night Owls, and we'll do a short wrap-up of Night Owls today. I've struggled through this stream. Fortunately, I had Volunteer with me, but my eyeballs, my pupils are still very much dilated. I was going to go for exercise, but it's too bright outside for me right now because of the sun. My eyes have not contracted from the drops that were put in this morning so they could look at it. I had a floater in my left eye, and I was concerned the retina might be damaged, so I had to go see an eye doctor today, and so my eyes are still the size of silver dollars. But thank you so much. If you're not a subscriber to the channel, please become one. Smash that subscription button. It's absolutely free. And be sure to push the notification button. By the way, if any of my mods are still here, I think, oh, there it is. Hendo just put up the Telegram announcement group. If you have Telegram, we have a free group on there that no one can put anything in there except me. So nothing in there except my own content. So you won't be inundated with crypto and spam and porn and stuff like that. It's only announcements for my videos and a few social media links, things like that. So join the Telegram announcements group. And I use Telegram because you can hide your number. People don't discover what your number is. It gives you a little bit more privacy or privacy if you prefer to say it that way. Also, for those who are paying members to support independent journalism for as little as 30 Rand per month, you can become a member. You help me raise money for my travels, for the equipment that I use to bring the news. It is quite costly. I have spent the past 2 years on average $6,000 to $10,000 out of my own pocket, which is a lot of money, and that's my retirement money, to bring the news to people. It's not simply sitting around eating Cheetos and sharing my opinion. I'm actually trying to bring valuable content to people around the world. So anyway, if you want to become a supporting member, you can do that with 3 levels of membership. Feel free to do that, folks. And there you go. Also, if you want to super chat, you can do that. You can do it directly, or you can go to chriswyatt.live. ChrisWyatt.live. And if you have a PayPal account, you can contribute directly to me through PayPal, and then the cut is much smaller for the intermediary. More money comes to me. But anyway, thank you very much, folks. I'll be back for Night Owls in a bit, and thank you to the new subscribers and everyone who tuned in tonight. Awesome audience. This is when I got excited about audiences back in the day. We're over 200, 300, 400, 500 live stream concurrent viewers. That was a lot of fun. I love my loyal and dedicated audience, which runs between 60 and 90, but it is nice to get other viewers in, so thank you all so much, and also to see some of the viewers who come here sporadically. Thank you very much. My thanks to my co-host, Wynand Toit, on Fireside with the Colonels. We'll be back, I'll be back in about an hour and 40 minutes, folks, for Night Owls. Take care of yourself. Hopefully my eyes will have closed by then. Anyway, folks, God bless and have a lovely. Should I play Dean Chancey's God Bless the RSA? I think I'll play that on the way out. So let me leave you with Dean Chancey and God Bless the RSA, the singing Texan singing about South Africa, folks. I hope you enjoy this song on the way out the door. Dean is awesome. Take care of yourselves. Cheers, everybody.